Hi and welcome to Leitrim Daily. My name's Breffney Early and you're listening to the Sports Preview Show here on the podcast. It is episode 242. Now today we're looking at the world of Gaelic Games coming back to us at an inter-county level, and there's a huge debate happening as we record this about whether or not that should happen or whether it will happen. We believe the GPA have polled their members, which does of course include the Leitrim Hurling and football squads, as to whether they want to play this weekend or not, and it'll be interesting to see the fallout of that should that vote come back at some stage today on Friday. It is expected to be announced what the outcome of that is, and it may be another obstacle to these games actually proceeding at the weekend. But as we record this on Thursday evening, at the moment all games are happening this weekend. Fermanagh did try and get their game off. That was denied. It goes ahead despite being down 17 players due to COVID tests and close contacts of COVID positive cases. So it's all up in the air at the moment. But as we sit here on Thursday evening as we record the show, these two games take place. Our Hurlers are out in action in their Division 3B League final against Sligo on Sunday afternoon, while our footballers, they make the journey to Newry in Down to Park Esler, take on the Down footballers in Division 3 of the National Football League. It's round 6. Round 5 was back in March. It almost feels like it was a different century ago. There's so much water under the bridge in the last 7 or 8 months. It's a little bit surreal, but that's where we are. That's where we find ourselves. So today we're going to be talking to the two managers of the two Leitrim teams. Terry Hyland will be joining us to talk about the whole situation within the football camp ahead of that game tomorrow evening, while Olcan Conway joins us to talk about how the Hurlers are faring out in their preparations for their final on Sunday. We'll also be having an in-depth conversation with Niall Morahan on his season so far, and I suppose the journey he's taken to come from Leitrim Village and Carrick Town all the way to the Showgrounds in Sligo Rovers, and the journey that he's been on over the last 14 or 15 years as a young developing footballer in schoolboy football into the League of Ireland, and now at a senior level with Sligo Rovers. They, of course, away to Shelbourne in a must-win game on Sunday afternoon. That kick off at 5 p.m. in Talca Park, available to watch on watchloi.com. Lots of streaming going on this weekend as well. Niall, of course, will be chatting to us about all aspects of his career later on in the show. We do also have other soccer representation this weekend. Dervla Byrne back in action. Her Peamount United side, they travel to Galway and they kick off at 6 p.m. on Saturday evening. Eamon DC Park. That game live on YouTube. Just search for the Galway WFC and you'll find that game. Kick off at, as I said, 6 p.m. in that particular game. That game is live. The GAAGO Games and the SSE Airtricity League game, they do charge €5 to watch those particular games. The women's soccer game is free. In the Under-17 League, in the Women's National League, Sligo Rovers, they host the Donegal League on Saturday afternoon. So Muireann Devaney in action with the Sligo Rovers on that particular game. It's all eyes on the Energia Community Series this weekend, again in club rugby. In Connacht, no game for Sligo this weekend. They're on an idle bye week. The Corinthians, they host Buccaneers, while Galwegians will host Ballina in the fixtures in Connacht this weekend, while in Leinster, Old Belvedere and Jack Gilheeney will make the short journey to Lansdowne to play against Lansdowne, their near neighbours, while Clontarf and UCD will do battle. Naas host Old Belvedere, and Terranure College will make the journey to Old Wesley to play in those particular clashes this weekend. Old Belvedere and Jack Gilheeney looking for their first win of the season, so hopefully that comes at Lansdowne this week. It's a big task, as is every game at that level of the sport in the country. Anyway, let's get on to the nuts and bolts of the action this weekend. It's a fairly truncated version of sport this weekend, but we're going for quality, not quantity. We're going to hear from both managers ahead of the footballers and hurlers return to inter-county competitive action this weekend, as well as a long, in-depth conversation with Niall Morahan ahead of another big weekend for Sligo Rovers. Now, it's been a long wait since the start of the year when Leitrim played the first 5 rounds of the National Football League, but it's round 6 this weekend. Hopefully, we're not quite sure what's happening. At the moment, it's all systems go for Esler Park on Saturday evening, and I'm joined by the Leitrim manager, Terry Hyland. Terry, welcome back. It feels like forever since we last had a chat.
Yeah, well, look, I suppose this year feels like forever, but everything is that there has been that kind of a period. To be fair, from a football point of view, yes, it does. It's been a long year, and as I'm not too sure what the sense in continuing the year was. To be honest with you, my opinion, they should have just drawn a line under it and left it off until next year and see where it's at, because you could be told today you're playing a game tomorrow, and then next thing everything can shut down. Even though technically we are elite sports people and we are allowed to operate even at the highest level of lockdown. So look, we'll have to wait and see.
In terms of, I suppose, the circumstances around the game, Down, of course, part of Northern Ireland. It's got a very different regime here from a COVID point of view, and restrictions are different. What's your own personal take on the game at the weekend, and whether it should take place or whether does it really matter in your opinion?
Well, look, in the end of the day, as I said before, and said this in family games, I don't think we should have started with the National League. I did say that we could get clubs back up and running. That's given all the football population sport. Once it comes into the county, I felt that if they want to play a championship and the format has been knocked out, as they decided a number of weeks ago, that's what they should have went it, and they should have either left the National League over until the start of next year and used it instead of maybe one of the cup competitions before the start of the league if they needed to play it off, or just leave it as is and start next year as the same as it was at the start of this year. To me, it means because of the way the figures are changing and the numbers of cases all over. I'm in the county now talking to you, and we're at level 4. Leitrim's in a county that's at level 3. Down is in a county now that is a different level of restrictions because it's Northern Ireland, and again, it's completely different. So, and this is what we're trying to deal with.
In terms of the game, I suppose, as it stands, we're talking on Thursday afternoon, and as it stands right now, the game's going ahead. You have to prepare a team on that basis. How is the squad looking? Are there any differences to maybe what would have played round 5 in the league in terms of personnel?
Well, personnel, we've had a number of injuries coming back from club championships. There's lads not available. We have, to be fair, and we have lessons open to the players, and I'm sure every other county and every other management has been the same. Lads have to make up their minds whether they'll travel on Saturday yet or not, because at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. Everybody's circumstances are different. It could be just do work related. It could be do with home and maybe elderly parents, or it has there's a lot of factors in this not away from football. And I don't think Croke Park has factored in this in their decision making, and that's been pretty hard line. As we've seen with Fermanagh looking for getting the game changed because they had a large number of cases and they don't think they'd be fit to field a team that's going to be fit to play, but yet they've been told you must play. So I think that it's once in a 100-year problem for the GAA. We had the last pandemic was in the 1919, 1819, around that time. So I think we should be further down the line as how we can work with rules and see where we're going forward, because communication is very very easy to do, yet the GAA format is still the same as we tell you and you do, and that seems to be the way they're running the league at the moment.
In terms of the Leitrim squad specifically for this weekend, without naming names because that's not fair to individual players, but is there anyone in your squad that might opt out of travelling on any of those kind of grounds?
I would say there definitely would be some players. Now, and it's fair to say, and you're right, and it's not to them, because at the end of the day, we said to them, and we asked the question of them rather than them coming to me and say, Terry, look, I don't want this. I said, if you have any issues, you let us know, because to be fair to young men, they will do what you ask them to do, or basically they do what you tell them to do. But in this scenario, it's a case we should have asked rather than tell. And to be fair, we've given them, we spoke about it last night. I said, let me know today or tomorrow, and we take it from there. And, I know we said there will be probably a number. I don't know what the number will be yet, but, and to be fair to them, it's the right choice, because they have issues that they have to address at home or at work or whatever it is.
How can you prepare a team in this situation, Terry, when you're not going to know maybe until late on Friday evening who's even available to you? And that could change. We've seen with the soccer during the week in terms of how Stephen Kenny's plans have been thrown out the window because of late COVID tests. Like, that could happen to any team as well. How can you prepare a team like that?
Well, you can't really. It's a case of show up on the day and see what happens and who you've got. Because you can't really prepare. You rightly said about the soccer, and we've seen that. And that's professional guys who are limited to their exposure to the public, whereas the GAA player is exposed to the public all day long, and then he's expected to go off and act like an elite athlete then on a game day or whatever it is, but yet he doesn't have the facilities to back that up. You know what I mean? In the end of the day, if you are, whatever you work at, if you work in a hospital scenario, or you work in a school, or you work in whatever scenarios that you've been told maybe not to get mixing too much, and yet that's your work day. You could pick it up at work as easy, you pick it up outside, and this is the problem with this coronavirus. It doesn't pick and choose who it wants to go to, and it's so prevalent out there, and it's nobody's fault if you get it, and that's the way it is. But people do try to mind themselves. They've been told to try and mind themselves. They've been told to isolate. They've been told actually not to go and visit their parents now. But yet, it seems to be okay to go and play football.
Yeah, it's all a bit strange. Let's try and talk a little bit about football for a moment, seeing as it is a sports show. And I think the whole country is sick to death of talking about coronavirus. In terms of the game at the weekend, is there anybody maybe that's impressed you through the club championship? I know you were at a lot of the games through the summer. Has anyone come to your attention that maybe wasn't in your initial plans back in March, April?
Yeah, but we brought in a few. Well, some of the lads were in before now, but young Tom Pryor we would have looked at, and he's in there at the moment. See, to be fair to young lads through the summer, they're probably not at a level, and this is no disrespect to the clubs to bring them in to play in the county football because they mightn't have the physical prep done. But there has been 2 or 3 players that we have looked at and who have stepped up. In my opinion, if they don't step out maybe before the end of this year, they certainly will play football for Leitrim in the future. Can
you tell us who some of those players might be?
Well, Paul Keeney, I thought had a very good year for Mary's. I thought Tom Pryor was excellent for Ballinamore, shall we say. I thought Donald Casey. And, then we had the other lads who had in, like Jack and all them lads, Gilheany, all them younger fellas. They done quite well with the club this year, and they are performing well. And, they are guys that will play in the future for Leitrim. See, people think that a fella does well in a club match and he should be in, and not only should he be in, he should be playing. But you ask any of them fellas in the community, it is a big step up.
Yeah, I think they know that themselves. In terms of, I suppose, the weekend's action, what's the expectation in the camp? How can you even judge what the expectation should be?
Well, our expectation was, of course, a week ago that we were going to go up to down and try and get a result out of it. As the week was wore on, again, going back to it, you said who wants to talk about COVID, but it does influence everything. And the fact that you can't turn on a radio and you can't flip the paper, you can't do anything but it's mentioning it, and then all these things else doubt into people's mind as to what they should do or shouldn't be doing, And in the end of the day, I suppose with Leitrim, I always say if you go out and you compete at the best of your ability and the result comes your way, well, that's what the day has been about. If it doesn't come away, you have to go back and work on what you need to improve. I honestly can't tell you how would, I often was going into a match and say, yeah, okay, we have a chance there. Okay, it's 50-50, 60-40 or whatever it is. I just genuinely can't tell you anything about the Allen's League because we've only had 4 weeks with them. We've only had 2 weeks with probably 8 or 9 of them, the guys in the finals. So we haven't a lot of prep done with them, whereas they were off for 6 months and then expected to come back within 4 to 6 weeks to play in the county football. So, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the opposition is the same. So it's very hard to judge it, what anybody is going to be like when you go out against them. You don't know what the opposition, how prepared they are. I'm sure they have the same queries and the same injuries and the same maybe little lack of fitness in some fellas as we have, so it's very hard to judge it.
Yeah, I think certain teams might surprise people with results over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully Leitrim can be amongst those. In terms of the weekend, of course, Tipperary to follow the week after, and that's kind of been the game most neutrals have targeted as maybe the make or break as to whether we can survive in Division 3. Would you see that the same way?
Well, yes, it probably will come down to the Tipperary game, and from that sense, don't get me wrong, Tipperary plays Offaly. And depending on what way that goes, today nick a result of Offaly, and then Offaly suddenly back in to the pot as well. So, permutations can change depending on what way rounds go this weekend. And as you said, I'm sure there will be surprises in it from that point of view in every division.
Yeah, and of course then the championship to come with Mayo, just on the off chance, because we're not sure exactly whether we're going to get to actually physically see you over the next couple of weeks or not because of the restrictions around games. But in terms of Mayo, what's your priority over the next 3 weeks? Obviously Louth, then Tipperary and Mayo. Is survival in Division 3 more important than a run in the championship? Or what is your, I suppose, ambition for the next couple of weeks?
Well, I'd say they're equal. Look, we like to give a game, we like to play well every day we go out, right? The reality is that the Tipperary game probably is, of 3 games, is the major one. at this point in time on the calendar. Survival in Division 3 for Leitrim is probably more important to them than, okay, I'm not going to say a run in the Connacht Championship is not important, but it would be great to get a run in the Connacht Championship. But let's get that league out of the way first, if that's the games that are going to be played in that sequence, and then we can see what we're like going into that Connacht game. But to me, of the 3 games that were fixed so far, the Tipperary game wouldn't be the major one.
And I suppose we are talking again with that kind of vacuum of not really knowing where we are. Is that within this squad of players and the management team that's around you to survive in Division 3?
It is. They're good enough. We work on them, and it's a matter about the application. It's a matter about who's available to us. And if we have all the players available to us, now we probably won't have, because we're Ray Muller, we've got a few long-term injuries, Fergal McTeague, guys like that. But we have enough players. If, again, going back to what we talked about, and again, and if they make themselves available to play, to be very, very competitive against Tipperary and take a result out of it. But at the end of the day, people might say Tipperary were in the semi-final a couple of years ago, but they're in the same division as us and in the same position in that division as us. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're any better than us or worse than us.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Terry, I suppose hoping everything goes all well for you this weekend in terms of the result and the performance, but more importantly probably in terms of everyone's health, that everyone gets through the game and home with no issues with any virus spreading in the camp or to the camp. So the very best of luck with everything that's involved over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we get a couple more games into the championship through the next couple of weeks and months as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Breffney.
And of course, it's not all about the Gaelic football this weekend, as our county hurlers also get their league campaign back up and running after a hiatus of 7 or 8 months. They have the Division 3B Hurling Final against Sligo in the Connacht Centre of Excellence over in Ballyhaunis at 1:30 on Sunday afternoon. I'm joined by their manager, Olcan Conway. Olcan, welcome back to the programme.
Thanks, Bethany. Thanks for having me.
It feels like another lifetime since we spoke about county hurling on the programme. What's it like to be back in action and to be looking into, hopefully, all things going well in the next couple of days, a league final on Sunday afternoon?
Look, it is great. It's great to be back out in the pitch. It's great to be seeing the lads again. It's a long time since we were lined up to play the league final on the Sunday, and everything was closed up on the Thursday. We had all our plans made, and everything was ready to go. But the way the situation was, it was the right call at the time. No doubts about it that the whole lot was stopped. But we're happy to be back. We're happy to be ready. We're looking forward to a league final against Sligo now on Sunday, and the lads are ready to give it everything they've got.
Is there any worry that over the next couple of days, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening, is there any concern that you might find the same thing happen again with a breakout of COVID in the region over the next day or two?
Look, if that is the decision, at the minute. I'm telling our lads it's on, in my mind it's on. I'm preparing that the game is on Sunday and not thinking any other way, because if we start second guessing ourselves and doubting ourselves, we won't be ready on Sunday. So if something happens between now and then, we will absolutely respect that decision. It's up to higher powers than us to decide what happens in them things, but we're solely focused on getting our heads ready and getting our bodies ready and being ready for Sligo on Sunday.
In terms of this personnel that might take to the pitch on Sunday, how different will it be from the 15 you would have picked maybe 7 months ago when the game was originally due to be scheduled?
It's a good question, Bradley. I can't remember what team I had picked for the last game. I was so busy focusing on this year's county final, for example. Was a good ding-dong match. There probably is 1 or 2 changes actually since that. We have to finalise the team. We have a team management meeting tonight to finalise and discuss 1 or 2 positions, and we have most of our plans laid. But as regards the last one, yes, there is 1 or 2 lads that probably weren't starting the last day that are starting on Sunday. There's definitely a few changes. A few lads have, they're nursing injuries and different things as well from the county final, and it's probably slightly different. Sligo have a whole new management team now, so it's actually a lot more unpredictable for us coming in now. We had a lot of work done and research done on what they were like at the time. We got to watch them in some league matches. We played them ourselves during the league and lost by a few points. So it was it's completely different now. So there is a little bit of unpredictability about it, which, that's fine. We are really trying to focus on what we need to do ourselves at the minute. We know Sligo are a superb outfit. They're playing in the Christie Ring. They're playing a division higher than us in the championship. They have, I think, 6 or 7 hurling clubs to pick from, and we have 2. So we've no doubts in our minds that we are the underdogs going into this game. But we don't mind being the underdogs. We don't mind taking on Sligo, and we're just looking forward to it and focusing on our performance on the day.
You mentioned the number of clubs that exist in Sligo versus those in County Leitrim, and there is a huge gap there. That 5 or 6 clubs that you mentioned, or 7 clubs in Sligo versus just the 2 in Carrick and Shannon and Clooneen from Manor Hamilton. Is that a problem when you're trying to pick a team that you have such a small pool of talent to pick from?
Not necessarily, because the lads in Carrick and the lads in Manor Hamilton are very passionate lads. We have a 30-man panel. They come, they train very hard, they give it everything they've got. I'm more than happy with the squad of players I have. They're such a good bunch of lads. They're good men as well as good hurlers. We're really close knit. We do talk, we have the crack, we train hard, we put in the hard work, and hopefully all that'll come together on Sunday against Sligo. The fact that we have less players to pick from than Sligo doesn't bother me. I want the lads that are willing to put that jersey on and fight for Leitrim, and when they put it on, we have who we have, and we work with them lads, and they're very keen to work and learn all the time as well. So again, just to reiterate, it doesn't bother me how many players we have. They're the bunch I have is the lads that I want anyway. They're great lads, and I'm very happy with them.
You mentioned the county final a couple of weeks ago, of course, played here in Park Sean McDermott, and I know we spoke very briefly after the game as we were both leaving the ground, and the competitiveness of that fixture over the last 2 seasons in particular, where it's taken last minute gasp goal from Carrick to level it and then to win it at the end of this year, also went to extra time last year. Is that a good thing for the county in terms of the competitive nature of what is effectively, in most counties, that would be a training game between Leitrim A and Leitrim B? You get to see it in the heat of championship action. Is that a bonus?
Look, there's never anything between Carrick and Manor, and all the years that I've been here, Manor have probably won just as many county titles as Carrick in the last 10-12 years easily. So it's always been competitive, always will be competitive, and that's what you want. You want lads that are going to go out and give their all for their club, and both sets of players always do give everything for their club. So it was an enjoyable county final to watch. I was trying to watch it on a neutral basis this year, and sit back and sat up in the stand on my own and just try to watch the players for my own benefit. And I have to say I loved every minute of it. It was great, good hard hitting, fantastic scores. It really had everything. The drama of the equaliser and the winner. It was a great advertisement for hurling. But me knowing all the players, knowing the teams, knowing the management, I would expect nothing less anyway. Even though it's only 2 clubs, the rivalry, the intensity the game is played at is just fantastic, and it really is. It is one of the best games I witness every year. As always, Carrick versus Manor in the county final.
In terms of, I suppose, the youngsters coming through that maybe weren't in your plans 12 months ago or 6 or 8 months ago, Has anyone impressed you? Has anyone come through that, I suppose, club structure over the last few months to kind of put their hand up for selection on Sunday?
I would say the short answer is all of them have, Brett. They've all improved so much. There's a really good bunch of young fellas coming through, from Carrick, and we have a few young lads from Manor as well, and a few more coming next year. So even the lads that are on the panel this year, over the next year or two, they're going to be under fierce pressure. That's not to say I'll be the Leitrim manager next year or anything like that, but I've seen the crop that's coming through behind them as well, and they're very talented. So, Leitrim Hurling, we hope is on an upward curve. It has been an upward curve, the last few years. The clubs have really improved in the last few years. Their hurling standards have really improved, and the county as well, with their fantastic one in the Larry Maher last year. We're in a league final this year. We're in the Nicky Racker Championship this year. So, we hope to progress. That's what everyone wants for hurling and Leitrim. We keep progressing and keep improving, and a lot of that comes from, it starts at the clubs, and it starts with the young lads at the clubs, and it's definitely starting to filter through onto the county as well.
In terms of the overall picture of hurling in the county, though, how much of a help would it be to your efforts, or to whoever might be in the Leitrim job in the future, if there was a re-emergence of the likes of Gortletra and Ballinamore, who have been so successful in hurling in the county over the last 30 or 40 years?
Look, would it be great to have more clubs? Of course it would be. There's no point in saying otherwise. It would be fantastic to have more clubs. But a club like Ballinamore or Gortletra, it has to really start from the ground up. So you're talking a long time. You have to have the youngsters coming through, filtering on to senior teams like Carrick and Manor have done, and that's very difficult to get going again. And I know a lot of the players and people in them clubs, in Ballinamore and Gortletra, and I know how difficult it is. And the only reason Carrick and Manor have survived over the years is because they get so much help. There's ex-players and parents that come and help out with the coaching and get these young lads to training and to matches and things. And that's a difficult thing to organise and get started again. So, look, I know Gortletra and Ballinamore are both doing bits and underage, and hopefully in time they can get up and going again. But it's not easy. It's not easy in a county like Leitrim, where the football is the most dominant sport. But, hopefully they'll battle on and they'll get there someday.
Olcan, listen, the very best of luck in the final. I hope everything, as we said to Terry a few moments ago, I hope everything goes to plan over the next few days in terms of public health, and that the game goes ahead on Sunday. And the very best of luck, and hopefully we have a league title coming home to Leitrim on Sunday afternoon.
No problem, Bresney. Thank you very much.
So here we are down in Drumshanbo. Because of the COVID regulations, we've moved outside of the studio environment, and we're joined by Sligo Rovers' Niall Morahan for a little chat about, I suppose, the season so far, but also your career to date. Niall, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an interesting season for Sligo, because I think you've probably been the surprise package of that division. Bad start, COVID came in, and since the restart it's really been probably one of the form sides in the division.
Yeah, I think, like you said, maybe the slow start obviously kind of had us as that surprise package coming back. Maybe no one expected us to kind of take off the way we did, and I think, as I've said to you before, I think if the season maintained its natural course, we would have started to put in performances like we did when we returned, and thankfully it moved us a lot further up the table.
Let's talk about the last couple of weeks, and then we might go back and take a look through some of the notable instances in your career. In terms of the last couple of weeks, there's been 2 weeks where you haven't had a game effectively, but you're still, after last night's result, I think we're recording this on Wednesday, you've just dropped out of the top half of the division for the first time. It kind of feels weird for Sligo in recent seasons, because they haven't been at that end of the league table. They've been hovering lower mid-table, so to be in that position, it must be nice as a squad and as an individual player to be kind of looking at yourself towards the top of the table.
Yeah, of course, obviously the last few seasons we have been hovering around the lower end, cutting it quite tight at certain occasions, so it's nice to have that bit of breathing space. But as a group and as a club, we want to be moving further up the table. And I think when we were in third a few games back, it was the highest position the club had been in a long time. So obviously Dundalk have a lot of games in hand on us, and I think they'll secure the third European spot. So it's kind of between ourselves, St. Pat's and Waterford to battle it out for that final European spot. So hopefully we can get that. It'll be a massive boost for the club.
It's a very strange season. Obviously COVID has affected everything across the entire country and across the entire planet, but from an Airtricity League point of view, it's, when you look at the whole situation, you win on Sunday potentially could put you into third place in the league table, albeit Dundalk with games in hand, but a defeat also could put you into third last in the table. It's one of those really weird yo-yo seasons where a lot of the teams in the middle of the table seem to be pretty much on a par with each other.
Yeah, it is. It's fairly hectic, all right. I suppose there's not a massive amount between the teams as it is in general. Anyone can beat anyone on their day, you know. So like I said, when we went from being bottom up to third, and now we're kind of down to sixth again. So it is fairly yo-yo. So you just kind of have to be on your game the whole time and kind of treat every game like a cup final, I suppose.
If we go back to the restart, that win against Derry caught a lot of people by surprise given the form that both teams had shown in. They were just a few weeks out of playing in Europe. You hadn't won a point. I think the only person who managed to get on the score sheet from play was yourself at that stage of the season. It's very different now. The goals have been pretty much free-flowing for Sligo over the last couple of weeks. Some big scores in there, but also on the other side, defending has been a bit of an issue, and there's been some high-scoring games that you've come out on the right end of, but also on the wrong end of. What's the view within the camp about the last 3 games in the season and where you're going to finish up at the end of the season?
Obviously we realise it's a massive run-in. I think I won't say an easier run-in, but it's probably not as tough as other teams have of a run-in. So I think, like I said, we just kind of have to treat every game like a cup final and just kind of go out and see where it takes us, because I think the last few games, picking up a loss or two, especially against Waterford, a draw against St. Pat's, it's kind of taken the fate of our season out of our own hands and putting it into the odds of the balance, you know. So we just kind of have to go out and try and put it back into our hands and pick up as many points as we can.
Shells this weekend, as we said, a win could put you as high as third or fourth on the table. A defeat sees them leapfrog you. In terms of the game, how do you approach a game like that at the weekend? Is there a fear of losing the game, or is it a determination to go and win the game that will dominate, I suppose, the proceedings for you?
I think it's absolutely determination to go and win the game. We know that they are breathing down our necks, but we know what's on the other side of that. We know that we can leapfrog another team or two ahead of us. So it really is, like I said again, a cup final.
In terms of, I suppose, the way the season has panned out so far, you look at the performances and that a team with limited resources and really pulled together at very last minute, both in February when the transfer window was open and again in the middle of the season with new arrivals coming in. What is it about Liam and John that they've brought to that equation that maybe was missing in under previous managers?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest. Obviously, since I've come in, I had one season under Jared Little, and the following season Liam came in and there was a big clear out. So he's been here for 2 years now, and obviously last year wasn't our best year either, but this year, maybe because the group has been, or a good majority of the group has been around for quite a while, we know each other, we know our playing styles, and we know where we want to go as a group. And I think they've brought in other players that kind of want to get onto that same wavelength as us, I suppose. So that obviously contributes to it as well, you know.
You've had a lot of time this year, maybe more so than you did last year, but you've been ever present apart from that one suspension. We might talk about that in a second, but in terms of your own game time, you must be happy with the amount of time you're playing on the pitch.
Absolutely, I am. I'm pretty much playing week in, week out at the moment, and that's what every player wants. And I suppose more this season I'm getting it in my favoured position in the middle of the park. So yeah, listen, I'm just delighted to be playing week in, week out, and that's what you want, isn't it?
I suppose as we're sitting here in Drumshanbo recording this, I don't know if you're aware, but the Ireland are playing Finland as we're talking at the moment. There's 2 former Sligo Rovers players in that starting lineup for Ireland today, Sean Maguire and Darrell Horgan. Probably, to be fair, both better known in other roles with other clubs, but both did come through the Showgrounds in their history. We look at Ed McGinty on the bench last night for Ireland under 21. last season, that was you, under-19s. You played in a couple of the qualifiers for the European Championships. Went to those European Championships, although picked up an injury and didn't really participate in that competition. Do you look at that as a realistic target for where you can end up personally out of Sligo Rovers? Is that achievable from your current position in the club?
100%, yeah, I do think so. Obviously, especially myself showing last year, Ed showing this year, and like you said, former players showing that the pathway is there. And I don't think that's any different, or will be any different for myself or other younger players coming up through the club.
Talk about some of the younger players coming through the club, because how aware are you, because you would have come through that under-17 squad with Daniel Leary, Colin Jinks, moved on to Dinky and Raf and others involved with the under-19s, on to Jared, and then now obviously Liam and John. In terms of how that's progressed, do you keep an eye on what's coming behind you, or are you very much now a kind of a always looking forward kind of guy?
I would be keeping an eye, obviously having gone through all that, the whole process myself. I would keep an eye, and there wouldn't be a massive age difference between myself and a few of the other lads coming up. But yeah, I'd obviously keep an eye on results and promising players coming through, and I think as years have shown in the past, there is still a lot of good talent coming through the club.
Without putting too much pressure on any one individual player, is there anyone who's caught your eye that you think maybe has a future in the bit of red jersey?
I definitely do think so. If you've been keeping up to date, I think Johnny Kenny's been banging in the goals for Sligo, and his old owl fella was quite the player as well, I think. So
you wouldn't have seen Johnny play live, but
I've heard all right, yeah. But yeah, I think he's seeming to be following in his footsteps a bit.
Let's talk about your own start in the sport. What first attracted you to, I suppose, soccer? Because we're here in Drumshanbo, it's where you went to primary school.
Yeah.
I suppose your family are well ensconced in this place. Your uncle lives probably in shot across the road. You grew up here. Your mum's from here. In terms of soccer, it wouldn't exactly be known as a soccer town. Essentially, it doesn't even have its own club.
No.
How did you end up playing soccer?
Yeah, like you said, I think it was in the southern half of the county. There was only 1 or 2 clubs, if even, and 3 in the whole county, I think. So yeah, Drumshanbo, it's not a massive soccer town, or Leitrim village even, but I suppose as a young fella I was kind of interested in all sports, and my parents would have encouraged that as well. So I think I would have been 5, 6, 7, I can't pinpoint it now, but I would have been going into the AstroTurf in Ora on Saturday mornings, and that's kind of where I started.
So that would have been with Carrick Town, and of course you played
yeah.
a couple of years with Carrick Town. You left after a couple of years to go to Strand Celtic. Was that because there was no team in Carrick, or just you felt you'd outgrown maybe the potential there?
I don't think it was because I thought I had grown. It's kind of, I think about it quite a bit. If there was still a team there, would things have panned out the same if I had stayed? But yeah, at the team there wasn't enough numbers the following year, sadly, and I decided to go to Strand Hill. And the big pull for me there was I had the option to play under 15 and under 16 football, which was obviously a big factor for my development, to be playing an age up, and I think that stood to me. So that is kind of what helped my decision to travel down to Strand Hill.
Of course, the following year took you into Sligo Rovers, and you were playing a year up there as well, under 17.
Yeah.
That's never seemed to faze you when you've taken those steps forward in age groups, maybe outside of your own comfort zone.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's kind of stood to me, especially recently in my career, playing against people older than you. And I think a lot of people say that if you are younger and you're playing against older boys or older girls or anyone, it kind of brings your game on.
In terms of, I suppose, the major checkpoints that you've hit over the last few years, I suppose that first team appearance, I know I think it was down in Limerick. You came on as a sub. I think we've spoken about it before on the show, but how big a night was that, and versus maybe how big a night was your first contract signing? Like, which was more important to you?
I think just getting on the pitch for the first time it's what everyone dreams of, you know. I don't think I kicked the ball that day, but just to get on the pitch and kind of see everything happening, it was a big moment for me. Yeah.
First start, of course, came at the end of that season. Shamrock Rovers at home in the Showgrounds, last game of the season. Kind of a game to nothing. The manager's changing. You know who the new manager's going to be coming in. Your chance to impress him, but you won man of the match in that first start. Did you realise at that stage that you were going to go on to have the next couple of seasons that you've had?
I would have certainly hoped for it, all right, but no, I didn't. I wasn't massively thinking that far down the line. Obviously, at the time, I was just quite nervous for my first start, and I just went out, and thankfully, I had a good game. Like you said, it was a nothing game really, end of the season, but it was my first start, so I kind of wanted to give it everything, But I think that kind of set a standard for myself, and I feel I've progressed a lot since then, but I kind of hold myself to giving it everything and putting in my best performance.
In terms of that game, because obviously people talk about moments and being in the right place at the right time, the fact that new manager in the stand watching the game, your player of the match, does that put you on a bit of a better footing with him maybe going on, that when he comes in he's like, well, that lad can cut it at this level?
I suppose as a new group, I kind of level playing field, I suppose, but I certainly don't think it did me any harm anyways.
In terms of the European qualification and the European Championships, was that expected? Well, I know you obviously, every kid dreams of playing for Ireland and dreams of getting a call up, but when you hit a certain stage, I think maybe the realistic chances of that call up are less and less and less as you get older. So you were 18 or 19 years of age already. Did you expect to get the call up when it happened? Had you any inkling that it might possibly happen for you?
To be honest, no. I was getting, I suppose, all the way up, I was seeing players in like the under 17 team, under 19 team getting call ups, and I was wondering, like, what's going on? Why am I getting a call up? But I think I've always said it. You just kind of have to keep plugging away and not get too bogged down. I would have got bogged down in past occasions. But I suppose I kind of stopped thinking about it in a way and just kind of took it day by day, game by game, and thankfully my form in the first team kind of helped that, and kind of took me by surprise a bit. I went up to the trials for the very first time, and it was obviously quite a nerve-wracking moment, but I just kind of gave it my everything, didn't think much of it, and then a while later I got the call up, I suppose. So.
And you got that call quite late into that qualifying round in terms of getting over to Russia, I think, at the time. How frenetic was that? Did you have time to actually let that sink in terms of how big of a deal that was, actually getting selected for your country?
It was obviously a massive moment at the time, getting the email or the phone call or text, or I can't really remember what it was. But
such a massive moment, you can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was an email, but I just remember looking at it and thinking, like, oh my god, like it's happening, But I think there was a quick turnaround between meeting up with the squad and flying out. It was just a surreal moment,
Describe going onto the pitch, first time in a green jersey. You're about to maybe take the first throw in or free kick, or just take your first touch in the match. What's going through your head?
So yeah, I think it was we had 3 games. First game against Romania, I kind of wasn't really expecting to play, and I didn't. And the second game, it was against Azerbaijan. Came on the last few minutes, and obviously when you're told to go warm up, you're like, okay, I'm coming on, I got to get ready. And then when you're actually standing on the sideline waiting to go on, it's a nerve-wracking moment, I suppose. You just kind of have to gather yourself and realise you go on and you have a job to do. But then obviously once the final whistle blows, you're like, right, I just made my debut for my country, and it's obviously a proud moment. And then my first start came a few days later against Russia, and that was probably an even better moment, I suppose. You're standing in the tunnel with your jersey on, and you're getting ready to walk out and then the national anthem and everything. So it's something you dream of,
Let's talk about that experience for a moment, because you mentioned making your debut in the last couple of minutes of a game, and then the whole experience of starting the game, maybe the anthems, the lineup, just even getting onto the pitch in that formation. Not to put a kind of a damper on it, but is there a difference between starting a game and being in that starting 11, the manager's choice, and coming on for the last couple of minutes in a match?
I think so, yeah. Everyone wants to play, everyone wants to start every game. Sometimes you just can't, especially in situations like that. You're new to a group, you're new to international football, and obviously if you told me before going out you're going to come on and you're going to start one game, I would have bit your hand off, So but yeah, I think in terms of club football, obviously now you do want to start every game. So yeah, that would kind of be it.
Let's talk about the suspension. I know we don't want to, but let's talk about, first of all, the 2 yellow cards, the sending off. What's your thoughts on the incidents that led to the dismissal in the first case?
I suppose just to address it, I think it's bound to happen over the course of the season. It's a long season, you know. I suppose I will say I've learned my lesson at this stage. 2 yellows, yeah. Both of them were avoidable. The first one, it was for dissent. I thought it was harsh enough myself, but the ref had warned me to be fair, but I kind of didn't pass any heed. And the second one, it was 92nd minute, I think. It was my own doing. Took a bad touch. It was nicked off me, and kind of without even thinking, I stuck my arm out, and as people say, your man made a meal of it. But yeah, it was avoidable, and I suppose it's never nice to be sent off, especially when you know there's 10 lads against 11 on the pitch, and if something goes wrong, it's your fault now, I suppose. So yeah, well, obviously wasn't the nicest moment of my career.
92nd minute though, it doesn't really have that big of an impact in that particular game, but then the suspension that it brings with it, minimum 1, possibly even more. In your case, it was just the 1 game. How do you then react for the next week or 2 in training? Because you've got all week knowing that no matter how well you do in training, you're not going to be part of that squad on Saturday or Friday night. Does that come into it at all, or is it really just a case of knuckle down and help everyone else get to that game night?
It's definitely a case of knuckle down, because obviously if you're not in the team, that team goes out and wins at the weekend, then you're out of the team, you know, I suppose, in a way. So you kind of can't just take it handy, I have no game at the weekend, let's do as you please. But it's definitely a case of yeah, just going out like in training every day and kind of showing your worth.
I suppose you've come straight back into the team as well after the suspension, which speaks, I suppose, to the level that you've reached this year, and I suppose what they think of you down in the club in terms of Liam when he's selecting that team. A couple of weeks' time, you face Derry in a FAI Cup quarter-final. You've been in the semi-final last year. It's probably the biggest highlight of last season. Massive capacity crowd in the Showgrounds. It's gone very different now in terms of match night experience. How does it compare now behind closed doors versus maybe the atmosphere, that carnival feel of a FAI Cup semi-final?
Obviously a cup semi-final, it's a massive occasion, and especially down in Sligo, it's a packed ground, you know, and I think that it usually stands to us as a team. I've said it before, and it's kind of like the 12th man. Last year we did put it up to Dundalk, and I think it was sickener in the last few minutes to go behind. But yeah, obviously, like running out onto the pitch in front of a packed Showgrounds, it's something that's, once again, like, it's surreal, you know. So it's a pity that if we do get to the semi-final stage again this year, hopefully we do, that the crowd won't be there. So it is a real pity.
Before that stage though, you do have that hurdle of Derry City, as we mentioned. The current situation, I don't really like bringing politics and health and stuff into a sports interview, but as a human who's involved in I suppose a work situation that potentially brings you up against people coming from one of the hardest hit areas in the UK and Ireland at the moment, is there anything going through your head maybe about a concern about being on that pitch with people who live in that environment? I know they're in a little bit of a bubble themselves, but they do still live in communities in Derry and Strabane and that kind of neck of the woods.
That's a tough one, you know. I think it would, if I suppose if you knew there was a chance some of them had it and that they could give it to you and you could say pass it on to your family, your relations, your grandparents, that definitely would play a part in your mind. But I suppose hopefully with all protocols that are in place, that'll be nipped in the bud before the match even takes place, you know. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. Obviously there was talk of the country going back into lockdown within the last week, so we were hoping that the league wouldn't go, and thankfully it hasn't yet. So yeah, hopefully with protocols that are in place that it can kind of be kept under control.
Have you as an individual been happy with that your health and your, I suppose, safety has been put first and foremost by the league? Have you had any concerns about the possibility of catching COVID over the last few weeks and months?
Personally, I haven't, no, to be honest. Kind of when we came back, the very first day of training, they kind of told us we have to kind of keep in our own little bubble, you know, that we can't afford to be bringing COVID into the dressing room, you know, because if someone does that and it's kind of snowballs, and next thing the league is gone, you know. So everyone kind of realises that, I'm sure, not just in Sligo but everyone around the league. And I think like it is a professional league, and I think the protocols have shown that at games and everything, it's well managed. And like I said, every day wear temperature checks before training. It's happened on occasions that boys have been turned around because they were too high, like you said. But yeah, we're masks, social distancing, and so I think that has kind of lessened my fear of catching it, you know.
I've just been very impressed with what the League of Ireland have done. From an outsider coming in, maybe at the odd game here and there, just covering it or supporting or whatever it might be. In terms of the next couple of weeks, obviously you've talked about the potential for a lockdown. We all hope it doesn't come to that, because I think sport, even if we can't physically get there, being able to watch it on Watch LOI, which has been phenomenal for the most part, 99% of it has been exceptional. Just to be able to watch the games wherever you want from the comfort of your own house has been great. Even without being able to get to games, it's so important that sport is still there, because it creates the discussion, it creates the interaction with supporters, even if it's all virtual at the moment. What would happen in your life? How different would your life be if the league went in the morning?
I suppose it'd be more heartbreaking than anything. I suppose you'd be basically losing a whole year out of your career, and obviously if it goes now, you wouldn't know what the story would be for next season. But yeah, I think like you said, obviously with matches being back, no matter what sport it is, it gives people something to talk about. Back in the real thick of the lockdown, there was nothing on the TV, so you couldn't even talk about matches or anything, you know. So I think it gives I suppose people something to talk about, or like you said, just something to watch, you know. So obviously myself, I'd still have college and all that kind of crack, so I'd be kept busy. But yeah, I wouldn't really, and I think a lot of people would be the same, that they hope it wouldn't go to that, you know.
How do you think the league is going to fare out? I probably shouldn't ask you how you think who's going to win the league, but at this moment in time, it looks very much like Shamrock Rovers might have the league wrapped up at the weekend. I know they were your last opponents. You got very up close and personal with some of them that night, 4-0 on the night. How disappointing is it to be that far off at that point?
It is.
Or is that a fair reflection of the teams on the night?
I think so. Yeah. Like obviously they gave us quite a beating up there, but any team will do well to go up there and not get a hiding, I suppose. You see, they bet Waterford the week before us, 6-1 I think it was, and they bet Dundalk the week before that again, 4-0. So obviously Tallagh's a tough place to go. They have an unreal style of football, you know, and their pitch helps it. It's a massive area. But yeah, listen, they're champions elect, I suppose. But I suppose that doesn't really affect us going into the match. You just kind of have to go out and say, all right, we'll give it our best shot. And unfortunately on the night, it just wasn't good enough, you know.
Let's rewind a little bit into the conversation and talk about the last 3 games, the league games of the season at least. It's Shells this weekend, and then there's Cork City at home, and then again a trip to Dundalk on the last day of the season, I suppose. Dundalk have faltered a little bit. I know they drew with Finn Harps. They just about got past Cork last night. They're there for the beating. If they're maybe a little bit off your game and you can rise it a little bit, there's a potential 3 points there. You've beaten them already once this season. You beat them last season. It's not anything new for a Sligo Rovers side. In terms of the run-in, what's required to get into that 4th place, to give yourselves a chance if the cup doesn't work out for you? Is that realistic for Sligo?
I think it's definitely attainable, yeah. And I think our best chance at getting that 4th spot is 9 points in the next few games, because like I said earlier, we've kind of taken it out of our hands. So we kind of just have to go out, try and pick up as many points as possible, and hope that the likes of Waterford and St. Pat's, they drop points, you know. But obviously Shells at the weekend, we've done one over them before, so I think it definitely will be a tough encounter again, especially going up to Torca Park. Cork, we'll be looking to get one back over them, especially after the last night out. And obviously Dundalk, the last day of the season, they'll be coming off the back of a hectic schedule, so hopefully, like you said, they'll be there for the taking. And
of course the FAI Cup thrown in the middle of all that as well. Sligo, well known in FAI Cup circles, I think 3 titles in the last 10 years, so maybe we can make that a 4th as well. It'd be great for the Northwest and for the club as well, just for that pick me up. because there's been a lot of negativity coming out of all aspects of life, and it's great. Some of the stories that are coming out of Sligo this year have been really positive. The fundraising by the supporters was exceptional back in, I think it was April or May, and it's just been a good news story after good news story. It's great to see it. And Niall, thanks very much for joining me. The best of luck in the last, hopefully, 6 games of the season as you head for a FAI Cup final, hopefully. Keep the fingers crossed. And thanks for having a chat with us here at Leitrim Daily.
Thanks for having me.
And that, folks, is all we have time for today. A massive thank you to the 3 lads for sitting down and having that conversation with me, to Terry, to Olcan, and also to Niall. Best luck to our hurlers and football squads as they are back in action this weekend, and of course everybody involved in what little sport is left in the county and across the country with Leitrim athletes. I'll be back on Monday with a rundown of the results of the weekend, and we'll be chatting to some of the participants across the weekend's sporting action. Talk to you then.